Hello all. So in the previous tutorial, we learned that we are going to develop a demo project, which is going to have three different layers, right? So we'll talk about the Mongo or the database layer in a while, but we'll quickly start understanding how did we build this front end layer and the back end layer. Now, just to call it out, we are not going to develop the code as we go through. In the interest of time, we have already the code available here. We are just going to take a look what exactly is this code doing, how it is being built. Okay, so we have a movies backend project and a movies front end project. So in the backend, this has been developed on the Spring tech stack, as I mentioned, and the front end is built on the Node.js tech stack. So we will first go to the backend project. So if you see through here, this is nothing any fancy, right? It's not anything differently that we have done in this application. So all that we have is there's a movies controller, a REST controller that is being exposed, right? So if we look at this code, okay, so within this, we are interested in only, there are many REST endpoints that have been exposed, but we are interested in only two of them. One, which is this list, which is used to, for the get operation to get all of the movies that have been persisted into the Mongo database. And the other is this particular post mapping, right? So, which is used to persist the data into the Mongo database. Now, how do we do? We again have different repositories, different service layers where you can perform some business operations. So if you go into the DTO, this is your Pojo. Then you have a repository which interacts with the Mongo directly, and then you have a service. Okay, so within the service, let's take a look at this service. So within this service also, we are interested again only in two of them, which is this add movie and the other is the find all movie. Okay, so the save is going to persist the data into the Mongo database, and find all is going to fetch the data from the Mongo database. How do we set up the interaction with the Mongo? Again, we have, thanks to Spring, so we have this properties which we just configure. Now these are going to be like environment variables which we will be passing at the runtime whenever the Docker container is being run, whenever it is being executed. Okay, so I did not make it a authenticated one for this demo purpose, but usually when you look at the production environments, they will have a username and a password, and the URI might change for that. This is it for the backend application. And then, even before we winding up on the backend application, let's talk about one another file, which is the Docker file. Okay, so let's quickly take a look at the Docker file. So this Docker file is going to be a multi-stage project, multi-stage Docker file, where we are going to build the application within the image. It's not that something like you generate the artifact on your local and you copy the artifact, because I believe that's like you're defeating the whole purpose of Dockerization. Hence we will do the build, we will hand over the build as well as to the Docker. So you'll see here something like from Gradle, this whole stage, right, this build stage is basically talking about taking a Gradle image, and you set up a working directory, then you copy within wherever your Docker file is. From there, all the other files into this particular folder, and then you run a Gradle clean build excluding the test cases just to increase the build time. And then once the build is done, then you come to the packaging stage, where basically you're taking an image which is used to run this particular application, right? And you have created two environment variables, then you have set up a working directory for that, then copy minus from. This is basically like whatever the build stage, this build stage that you have generated the artifact that is copied into this app home directory, basically into this. This means that whenever you run this clean build, a jar is being generated, right? So that particular build libs folder, you'll be copied into this working directory. Then we are exposing an 8080 port because that's the default port. As I mentioned earlier, one of my tutorials, this is purely for documentation. Excluding this also should make it run fine, right? Then you have an Java jar. Well, this is how you start the container. when you sorry start the application, right, where you specify your app home and the jar location. Nothing different. This is all about like how the backend application is been built. Then we'll quickly come to the uh, front end application, right? So within the front end application, you have an index.js. We'll quickly take a look at what index.js is. Then you have a public folder where the home.html, the HTML content that is being shared to the user, and then you have a Docker file, right? Let's quickly take a look at what index.js has. Right? So here, if you see through, it's all like some Express and the Node libraries that we use in order to bring up this application. All that it is doing is whenever a slash endpoint is hit in the browser, all that I need is a home.html page to be served back, and this will be running on the port 3000. Then if I go back to the HTML, right? So nothing different here. So it's like a old school implementation where you have an Ajax call whenever you want to make the data persisted to the database, and then you have something a get call whenever you want to call the this was the get call, and then in the similar fashion you'll have a post call in order to persist the data, and then you have the HTML out of it, right? So that's pretty much on the HTML. Then you have the package dot the Docker file. So let's quickly take a look at what the Docker file is about. So this is going to be built on from the node image, and we are creating a working directory set here. You're copying the entire source code to this particular working directory, do an npm install, and you're exposing this a port on 3000, right? And then you run this node of index.js, right? So that's what our backend and the front end application looks like. Okay. In the next tutorial, we will see how to build the images and how to start the containers. And while you start the containers, you have to ensure that these containers are going to be in a state where they can be able to interact with each other, right? So just to we'll not deep dive in how it happens, but just to make you understand, right? So if you look through this within the Docker, right, and the Spring Boot, when it was interacting with the Mongo, right? This MongoDB host, this is on a separate container, right? So how is it's going to interact? I think we understand that we have some understanding of the the Docker network. Okay, we'll not deep dive into them, but we'll just in the next tutorial we'll start seeing how this interaction really happens. Right? See you in the next tutorial.